very good day to you and welcome to the Game Changer program, proudly brought to you by the Legal Resources Foundation. Today we're going to be talking about access to documentation and birth certificates in Zimbabwe. A document such as a birth certificate enhances a person's ability to get opportunities throughout their life, and it obviously makes a difference. From birth certificates, a person can go to school, can get their first ID, and after an ID, you can do whatever it takes for you to succeed in life. But what if there are challenges to accessing such important documents? Well, I'm not the expert here, and I have with me Philippa Muchengwa, who's a lawyer at Legal Resources Foundation, who will give us more information about the legal issues to do with access to documentation and birth certificates in Zimbabwe. Philippa, how are you today?
I'm good, and you, Unique?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining us on the Game Changer program.
You're welcome.
So, Philippa, first of all, can you please tell me and the audience what is Legal Resources Foundation and what do they do?
Well, Legal Resources Foundation is a non-governmental organization whose main mandate is to give legal services, especially to the indigent members of society.
Right.
And they give that service for free. We mainly deal with cases to do with family law issues, be it divorces, issues to do with maintenance, domestic violence, you name them, deceased estates, property disputes, and so forth. We also educate communities on the various aspects of the law, laws to do with the different types of inheritance. What is domestic violence? How do you acquire a birth certificate, which is actually the topic on call today. We do educate people on issues to do with summons, issues to do with property rights, issues, a lot of issues.
Yeah.
We also
And this is all for free?
All for free.
Wow.
Yes. We actually go to the communities, both urban and rural. We work with various community leaders.
Right.
Who mobilize for us, and then we speak to their people. Basically, the aim is to ensure communities that are legally empowered, which can actually claim their rights and realize that I'm in need of a legal service, or I need to approach this service provider to get a remedy. That's what we do. We do capacity building of those in the justice delivery sector. Right. We train the police, especially the victim-friendly unit department within the police, which deals with issues of domestic violence, those sensitive issues, issues of sexual abuse and so forth. We also, work with, community leaders, traditional leaders, the prisons and so forth. So basically, that's what we do as Legal Resources Foundation. We also identify gaps within the law through our advocacy and research department. We work with Parliament sometimes, whereby maybe we come up with position papers regarding certain issues within the law. It could be a law that we feel is unconstitutional, or a new law that must be promulgated. We do all those things. So basically, that's who we are as Legal Resources Foundation. And let me say that for everyone who comes to our office, the service is for free. They don't pay any fee to Legal Resources Foundation. But perhaps when they then go to court, that's where they might be needed to pay the court fees. Otherwise, for Legal Resources Foundation, we give them free legal advice, draft court papers for them, give them a lawyer who represents them in court for free.
Wow.
That's what we do as Legal Resources Foundation.
That's absolutely incredible, playing a key role in empowering communities. So going back to our topic today, we're talking about access to documentation and birth certificates. Philippa, what is a birth certificate?
Well, a birth certificate is a form of identity. It gives a person some form of identity. That is, it gives a name, a surname, where they originate from, where they were born, their country of origin, and so forth. That's why people without birth certificates are usually referred to as stateless persons, because we don't really know where they originate from.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously you talk about a person without a birth certificate being a stateless person. Why is it important to have a birth certificate?
Thank you very much for that question. Let me start by saying a birth certificate is the starting point for one to acquire basic services.
Right.
You need a birth certificate for you to acquire a national ID. You need a birth certificate to register your child at school. You need a birth certificate to access social services, be it food aid or food distribution and so forth. You need a birth certificate for you to acquire employment, because without an ID, you are not able to open a bank account. The prospective employer cannot even know who you are. So even for security reasons, for the nation, you need an ID or a birth certificate, because if you commit a crime, remember your fingerprints are taken and then they are submitted to the the offices they call them. If you commit a crime, they can actually search on your fingerprints and then know that this is the person that has committed this crime. So a birth certificate is a very important document. It's the starting background for everyone in life.
And what is required for one to be able to access a birth certificate?
Well, the general requirements are really the birth record. That is, if you have one. You also need your father and mother, if you are a child. The father and mother need their IDs to be in place. They also need the marriage certificate, if it is available. Those are the basic requirements. For someone who was not born at hospital, witnesses who witnessed the birth of the child might be required. Yes.
So, you know, it's quite interesting, just going back to what you're saying. Clearly, the birth certificate plays such a critical role in every stage of a person's life. Let's look at who is mandated to get a birth certificate for the child.
When it comes to registering the birth of a child, anyone, any custodian of the child can actually get or register the birth of the child. If it's the mother, they can register. The father can register. The grandparents of the child can register. Any custodian through the services of social welfare can register. So it's the responsibility of everyone. It can be an orphaned children who might say, I don't have any parent to assist me to get a birth certificate. But now with the New Children's Act, which was recently promulgated, social welfare is now mandated to assist those kind of children to get registered.
I see.
Yes.
That's interesting. So I think a few years back, there was a big conversation around single mothers, you know, getting their children birth certificates. Is this possible, and what are the challenges there?
It's very much possible, and there are no challenges associated with a single parent registering. Let me say single mother registering their child. Especially where in circumstances where the father is not cooperative. The law does not preclude the mother from registering the child in their maiden surname. It's allowed at law.
And also looking at the father, can the father acquire a birth certificate for his child without the mother?
Indeed, the father can acquire a birth certificate without the mother. That is, if the father is in possession of the mother's ID and a marriage certificate, they can actually approach the registrar's office to register the child. In the event that the mother is deceased, the father can approach the registrar's office with the death certificate and a relative from the mother's side to register the child. There is also a court ruling, I think it was sometime last year or last year but one, which dealt with abandoned children, those children that are abandoned in the hands of their fathers by the mothers. Now the case indicated that under those circumstances, those are treated as special circumstances, and fathers in such predicaments can actually register, provided they are able to prove that the child in their custody was abandoned in their hands by the mother of the child.
I see.
Yes.
There's a lot of misconceptions, Philippa, in different communities, especially around the single mother, single father issue. Why do you think there are a lot of misconceptions?
There are a lot of misconceptions because people don't know what the law says. That's starting point number one. And a lot of people tend to, wrongly advise each other without seeking the legal recourse available to them.
Right.
Or without even approaching the registrar's office to just inquire how they can register if they are single. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know you did mention what is, you partly touched on what is needed when registering a child born out of hospital. Do we have many of these cases, and what are people doing about this?
Yeah, we definitely do have so many of these cases, especially in farming areas, farming communities, those compounds and so forth. People just meet, have children, but they then don't register their children. We do have quite a lot of those cases. And basically in such instances, like I said earlier on, the people in such scenarios where children are born out of hospital, they need at least a witness, or maybe the person who assisted the mother to give birth can actually come to witness the birth of the child. Where the person who witnessed the birth of the child is not available, the mother or father can actually get some confirmation from maybe a community leader who is aware of the birth of that child, be it a councillor, a village head, a chief, or the owner of the farm who knows that there are these people who had children at my farm and they need to register those children. So basically it's about getting a witness to assist you to register the birth of the child. But most of the challenges that are then faced by these single persons, they tend to do shortcuts. They get to the registrar's office, get someone by the street to say, come and witness for me. And then when that person is being questioned by the registrar, you know, maybe the person is not even aware of the name of the child or when or where the child was born. And then they are all lost and dismissed.
I see.
So it's always good to get a witness who has a history of where and how the child was born to assist you in registering your birth.
So you were saying that most of these people, especially in farms and rural areas, in compounds, are meeting, having children and not registering their children. What are the impacts of this?
The impacts basically are that when the child then wants to register for whether it's ECD or grade 1, a birth certificate is needed.
Yes.
If they want to register for grade 7, O level, or even A level, a birth certificate is needed. Now, in most schools, government schools, the first thing that they ask you is whether your child does have a birth certificate. Perhaps in some schools they might consider, but give you timelines within which to then register your child and bring the birth certificate. So the birth certificate registration is quite a very important stage in a child's life. Yeah.
Well, after the short break, we'll continue this conversation in our last segment as we speak to Philippa about some of the solutions in our communities. Obviously, Legal Resources has been playing a key role in empowering communities to understand their rights, to understand the laws, and so much more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Game Changer program, proudly brought to you by the Legal Resources Foundation. Today we're talking about access to documentation and birth certificates. Just before the break, Philippa from Legal Resources Foundation was giving us a background on why these documents are so important and why they're almost the backbone of anyone's life from, you know, the tender age of 2 years old up to the time that you're 18, you want to go to university and you want to get a job. But we still have challenges of people or parents that are not taking their children after they're born to get birth certificates. And right now we want to look at what is the root cause of all of this and how can we move forward as to find solutions to these challenges. Welcome back, Philippa.
Thank you very much.
So, off the record, you were actually talking about the district registrar's office not being at ward level. Tell us a little bit about the challenges of, you know, some of these parents, especially in rural areas or, you know, community compounds in the farms. What are some of the challenges in sort of creating a barricade from them to not get birth certificates for their children?
All right, thank you very much. Some of the challenges that we have identified as Legal Resources Foundation is actually, poverty. Sometimes people may not have the bus fare to even transport themselves to the registrar's office, which is at the district, not at ward level.
Right.
And especially in instances where perhaps the child or the parent of the child has to carry with them witnesses to go and witness the birth of the child. They may not have the bus fare. And the issues of distance, probably from where they are staying and to where the district office is. Those are some of the issues which hinder them from traveling and to go and register the birth of their children. And then some of the issues are to do with ignorance of the law. Yeah. The ignorance on the importance of the birth certificate. Some of the issues are to do with maybe there are disputes between, say, the fathers-in-law, maybe the brother-in-law or the mkwasha has not paid lobola. And then the parents of the wife then say, we will not have our daughter assist you to register that child because you haven't given us lobola, you haven't paid lobola, so we will not cooperate with you. So those are some of the challenges that we come across. And then in the instances of death of the mother of the child, parents of the deceased mother may not cooperate in providing the death certificate. The mother is the backbone for the registration of a child. So in the absence of the mother, it becomes very difficult most of the times, unless you are able to then prove that, well, in the case of an abandoned child, that's when you can then say, let me just register this child, even if the mother is not there. But in most instances, where there are disputes between the in-laws, it's very, very difficult to register a child in the absence of a mother.
That's quite sad. And so how are these challenges being dealt with at district level from the registrar's offices as well? I mean, do they see these challenges and what are they doing to solve some of these predicaments?
Well, it's unfortunate. I cannot really answer that one. But from the feedback that we gather from people who then approach our offices for solutions, it's quite a difficult situation for them to convince the registrar to register them in the absence of the mother or any relative from the mother. It's very, very difficult. So perhaps what might be needed is actually a revisit of some of these requirements that have been set up by the registrar's office to be changed or revisited at least, or be reviewed to ensure access to everyone who is in need of the document.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, Legal Resources is playing a key role in communities to also educate the communities about where they need to go, as far as it might be, to get registration for birth certificates for these children. So let's talk about, now we've talked, I think, a little bit enough about children. If you're an adult and all your life you didn't have access to a birth certificate, what do you do?
Okay, for an adult, you don't need to be accompanied by your parents because you're already an adult. You can actually represent yourself. There are adults who already have ID numbers. For instance, our mothers. Some of them do have IDs, but do not have birth certificate. I understand way back, you could actually get an ID without a birth certificate. For those ones, it's easy. They simply take their ID with them to the registrar's office and then get the birth certificate. And then for an adult who did not have an opportunity to register but does not have an ID, you then need to have 2 witnesses who are 10 years older than you to accompany you to the registrar's office to witness your birth. You need a letter from your previous school or a letter from your employer just confirming who you are and when you were born and so forth. So basically, those are the requirements. Where the birth record is still available, you can actually take it with you to register yourself.
I see. And so going forward, Philippa, what are some of the suggestions that Legal Resources have put on the table? Have you put some suggestions on the table to make life easier for each Zimbabwean to be able to have access to a birth certificate?
Well, as Legal Resources Foundation, we do conduct mobile legal aid clinics in partnership with the registrar's offices in the different districts. So when we go out there, we mobilize people who are in need of the very important document to come on the ground and get registered. And most of the times we've seen results coming out, results of people actually getting registered within their communities without necessarily having to go to the registrar's office. So that's what we are doing as Legal Resources Foundation as a mitigatory measure.
Yeah. And what sort of impact have you been seeing?
Well, the impact is quite great. I could give examples of the October 2023 mobile legal aid clinics, which we did in Mutoko and Karoi, respectively. In Mutoko, we had about 70 people who registered on the ground. And in Karoi, we had about 59 people who registered on the ground. So the impact is quite big.
That's interesting. So obviously, I mean, the registrar's office is also seeing the impact and what needs to be changed to make sure that every Zimbabwean has access to these important documents. Well, thank you so much, Philippa, for joining us. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this very special and important discussion. If you have any more questions about the Legal Resources Foundation and the work that they're doing in different communities, or if you'd like to visit them at their offices, you can get the details just below the screen. You'll see the details. And you can start asking key questions around access to documentation, property rights, even issues to do with gender-based violence. We are getting into 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Today, we were talking about access to documentation and birth certificates with Philippa Muchemwa, who is a lawyer at Legal Resources Foundation. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Remember, this program was proudly brought to you by the Legal Resources Foundation, and we'll see you next time on the Game Changer program.